Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to The Walk. Today is Friday, July 11th, and we're up to Hebrews chapter 7, verse 18. We've been talking about the fact that Jesus is from the order of Melchizedek, that he is literally from the line of Judah, whereas the Levitical priests were from the line of Levi, and that family lineage was extremely important back then. We've also been talking about the fact that Jesus's priest-king service is much more perfect than any of the Levitical priests, that there was a need to replace those Levitical priests because they didn't do exactly what they should have been able to do because they were so human, because they sinned and they had to atone for their own sins first. So that brings us to verse 18, which says, "For on the one hand, a former commandment is set aside because of its weakness and uselessness." We're talking about the fact that the Old Testament is the old promise. We are under the New Testament, and we therefore have that new promise. This is the law, and the Old Testament rules have become so twisted that they became what was worshiped rather than what was godly being worshiped, rather than worshiping God. It was like the Old Testament law became an idol, and the more you followed it, the more status you were able to earn, and you were working to earn that relationship with God. And it removed the worship from God and put all the focus on the rules. Verse 19, "For the law made nothing perfect, but on the other hand, a better hope is introduced, through which we draw near to God." We're told over and over in the Bible that we're to draw near to God. We literally have no means of doing that without our relationship with Jesus Christ. It's because of our relationship with Jesus Christ that we can draw near to God. So 7:19, the ESV Fire Study Bible had this to say, "God's Old Testament law is holy and good, and yet was set aside because of its weakness and uselessness, in the sense that it could not make people right with God. The law was imperfect in that it could not provide people with the power to fulfill its demands, nor could it offer complete and perfect access to God. Yet the law was meant to prepare people for a better hope, God's perfect plan, which would later be revealed through Christ." So it was to prepare people for the coming Messiah. Verse 20, "For it was not without an oath. For those who formerly became priests were made such with an oath." An oath is a promise. "But this one was made a priest with an oath by the one who said to him, 'The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever.'" So the promise under which Jesus becomes a priest is very different than the promise that was made when a person from the family of Levi became a priest. Remember when we talked about, not last week, but the week before, that Jesus did not have to atone for his own sin, making the sacrifice for the people. And that's also very different from the Levitical priests. We have to understand that sin is not that the sacrifice for sin was a substitution for paying for your own sin. And Jesus made that perfect substitution. Verse 22, "This makes Jesus the guarantor of a better covenant." A guarantor is something that's used in business documents, and it's a firm obligation. Jesus was able to pay that obligation. Verse 23, "The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office." Their office as a priest would end. Jesus's will not. Verse 24, "But he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever." Now this next note, I really prayed over whether or not to include it because it seemed like it kind of came out of left field, but it was a study note in the Apologetic Study Bible. And we don't typically talk about the Mormon faith, but this note here is something that we need to be aware of if we're ever interacting with Mormons and understanding who they are and what they believe. Mormons incorrectly claim Melchizedek's priesthood for its faith. So they say that they're from the order of Melchizedek. Several high offices of the Mormon Church supposedly grow out of the Melchizedek order. The Mormons' doctrine, however, is false because Hebrews states that Jesus is the only high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So Hebrews comes right out and says the only one from that order of Melchizedek is Jesus. There is nobody else. But yet many higher ups in that Mormon church will claim that they are from that order of Melchizedek. Be aware of that. Don't forget it. But what our overall message here is that the Old Testament law, and it says it right here in Hebrews 7 verse 18, it had weaknesses and it became useless. And mostly because nothing could be made perfect through it. But through Jesus, we can be made perfect. Through Jesus, we have the righteousness of Jesus Christ. We have that intimate relationship with God because Jesus can intercede for us. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and keep walking the walk.